It's time to fasten your seatbelt and rev up that engine. It's time to go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is your weekly look inside the world of NASCAR. Now live, here's the pit crew, Steve Ronkowitz and Charlie Turner.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go on Pit Row, boys.
Better than that, let's have at it, boys. Brian France finally got his wish, didn't he? Hi, everybody. I'm Charlie Turner. He's Steve Ronkowitz. Say hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, he's Dan Beaver. Turn up your mic, Steve. You're a little quiet over there.
Am I quiet? Oh, my God. I've never been accused of that.
Yeah, not usually.
There. How's
anyway,
that?
He's Steve Ronkowitz, and that's Dan Beaver down in Texas. Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great. 2 races to go. Makes me a little sad, but other than that, I'm doing great.
2 races to go, but we had a pretty interesting one this past Sunday. At least the end of it and the post race part of it were I thought real interesting, and that's been all that anybody's been talking about for a couple of days. NASCAR get what they wanted with this chase thing, you guys? You think?
I think they got everything they wanted and more. I don't know that they were looking for the fisticuffs per se, but I guess that's a added benefit, or you know, I guess it's a benefit because again, the mainstream sports guys and the mainstream news guys are talking about NASCAR, so no publicity is bad publicity is the way you have to look at this thing, I guess. But we'll talk more about the altercation, I guess, as we go on. But I thought it was a boring race up until about the last maybe 60 laps, and then all of a sudden it was riveting.
A good finish wipes out a mediocre race every time. So if NASCAR would just figure out some way to have people would be happy to have those 30, 50 lap races if they were like that.
Just mandatory restarts every, I don't know, a dozen laps. We'll just we'll stop everybody. We'll roll the let's see. We'll figure out whether we're going to be on a pit or a tire window, whether or not you're going to change tires or not change tires. Put some kind of bonus thing in there for leading after 50 laps, and then it'll be exciting for the whole 4 hours.
Well, once again, I think the great part about the whole thing was the whole strategy thing. You had guys coming in on these pit stops, and some were not coming in. Some were taking 2 tires. There were 4 tires, and then the amount of guys that were coming in would vary from yellow to yellow. I thought that was the greatest part of this thing. That's what I think has always been missing. It's not that racing isn't great. I think the missing part has been that multiple question as to what you're going to do, how you're going to finish this thing out, and strategy. That's the part I think is most fun to watch.
Bite your tongue. What I do for my day job, that is the worst possible stuff that can happen. Although you're right, it does make it interesting, but it sure makes them hard to predict. I mean, even if you tried to predict the end of the race from halfway through at Texas, you would have been way off base.
Oh yeah.
You tried to predict it from the last 20 laps, you couldn't have done it. It was really something. And it looked to me like maybe Goodyear's tire was a bit inferior, which added to the the tire drama, tire changing drama. They actually let the teams go get. I'd never heard this before. They let the teams go get another set of tires, but it was on a first come first served basis because they didn't have enough for everybody. Now, how do you work that one out?
Well, first of all, you are absolutely wrong, Turner.
No, am I really?
Goodyear has never made an inferior tire, ever. Just go ask them. They'll let you know. Now, some tires may fall off a little quicker than others, but they have never made an inferior tire.
And that's by design. They want the tires to fall off when they fall off. When they shred, that's entirely on the crew.
Exactly. That's because they've done something that's not up to the parameters of the tire as they have given them to each individual team.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly configured mile-and-a-half racetracks, Dan. Exact same thing.
Yep.
Well, we did. Go ahead, Dan.
That ended up playing a big role, almost playing a big role in the chase when was it Logano's lug nuts that popped off because the glue wasn't set. So even by giving them doing them that favor, it almost bit one of the chase contenders.
Well, and I cannot remember. I'm sure this has happened before, particularly probably with the lesser funded teams, but I don't remember at a NASCAR Sprint Cup race teams admittedly putting on used tires to get through a segment. I mean, there was Logano, I think, I'm actually thinking of right there, where they put on a set of scuffed tires at the end of the race. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I like that stuff.
It hasn't happened in a long time, but at one time that was the norm. Is that these guys used to love to run scuffed tires. They'd put 10, 12 laps on them, then they'd come back in and take them off and save those tires for the end of the race. That was the go fast secret for many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I remember sometime back Dave Marcus making, I think it was Dave Marcus, James Hilton, I think, did it for a while too. He'd go out there and during the race scuff tires for the other teams. Run a couple of laps, come change tires, run a couple of laps, come change tires, and then sell the tires to the other teams up and down the road.
It sounds like a Hilton business plan to me. From what
I think Hilton did that, but then Dave Marcus, they tried to get his tires to give them to somebody that he didn't want to give them to, and he was just sitting on them in one race. Wouldn't let NASCAR take his tires back because he wanted to give them, I think, to Childress, and they wanted to give them to someone else. He said, I paid for these tires. I'll give them to whoever I want to. NASCAR changed that rule soon after that.
Yeah, Marcus used to do that all the time for Earnhardt Sr. That was actually his job. His job, yeah, was to go out there and scuff tires for Senior.
Yep.
So, and there was not, and you're absolutely right, Dan. I think it was once NASCAR stepped in and said, "Hey, look, you're going to give them to who we want you to give them to," and he said, "Sorry, ain't going to happen."
I just remember, I remember the picture of him sitting on his stack of tires with his arms just folded.
We got to get to the fight. Okay, the end of the race is really interesting. Jimmy Johnson won. I called that, by the way, 2 weeks ago. Of course, I called it last week too and didn't get him. But
you tried to back out. I wouldn't let you back out. We got to give some credit there too.
Yeah, you were trying to backstep with the best of them, Turner.
Oh, I'm in for next week for Phoenix. So Jimmy Johnson wins the race in a dominating. That was a vintage number 48 performance. I thought those guys looked like we expected them to look for the last 10 weeks and didn't. Probably thinking, man, if we just had this car a couple weeks ago, we'd be in good shape. He wins. There was a complete inversion of the points race field in the last 15 laps of the race. All the guys that were up front are suddenly in the back, although everybody is fairly close to qualifying. Phoenix shapes up to be a barn burner.
Yep. And actually, I was kind of edging that way. If we want throwback races, we want the throwback style of racing. That's the kind of stuff that I loved back in the day. And when you had the tires falling off, and you had drivers on kind of different agendas, and some were really good and some weren't. That was what was fun to me, and I think that's what helped grow NASCAR. Not this foolishness in the pits, the fights and what have you. That's not the kind of throwback we need. What we need is to get back to good, hard racing on the track. And I'm okay with there only being 10 cars on the lead lap. We don't need to have this NASCAR's no driver left behind policy where we got 30 cars on the lead pack. Some weeks your guy does good. Some weeks your guy does. Yeah. Some weeks your guy doesn't, and you just got to accept that. But,
hey, we're joined by Beth Ann. Hey, Beth Ann, what's going on? I know she watched the race. We've been talking about the race itself, Beth, not the wrecking and punching at the end at this point. What'd you think of it? Maybe she can't hear us.
Hey, Beth, see her moving around though.
We see you, but I can't hear you. Maybe you can't hear us. Okay, we'll get back to that later on. Anyway, I did put up a question to spur some comments on the On Pit Road Facebook page today, and it related to what happened at the end of the race. And here's what I put up, and we got a ton of comments already when I looked about an hour ago. Who was more wrong at Texas, and did you like it? Who do you think? Who was more wrong? I think, to me, I'm going to start it off. I think Jeff Gordon was wrong. I didn't see that what Keselowski did was wrong. There was an opening there. He went for it. Gordon tried to close the door too late, or didn't didn't think Keselowski wasn't going to give that shot a shot, and got wrecked because of it. Or got a tire blown because of it.
Well, that's easy for me. Anytime Jeff Gordon's involved, I know who's to blame. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, in that incident, I certainly agree with both of you guys. Gordon showed absolutely no situational awareness whatsoever. It's like he thought he was the only car out there, or only driver out there, or he thought he was only racing Jimmy Johnson, and forgot about everybody else that was behind him. Specifically, the two hungry guys who had to win to get to the next level.
Yep, absolutely. He was 100% in the wrong. The time he was in the race car in the green-white checker, to the time he out of his race car, to the time that he was involved with whatever he was involved with, because I don't think he ever threw a punch, actually. I think it was more crew members that were the punch throwers.
He took one.
Yeah, he took one. He took one, and Brad took one, no doubt about that. But he was totally wrong. And, you know, I almost have to throw just about as much culpability to Harvick, because Harvick was the bully on the playground, trying to instigate, and he seemed to be at least semi-successful at that instigation of what happened.
That's exactly the way I described Harvick earlier today, that he's a bully.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why he's got to be that way. Because what's Kevin Harvick ever done, really? He's won a few races. He's had some decent rides, but he's not like he's a 4-time champion or anything, or a 1-time champion. I just don't get it. I don't see where all of a sudden he's the policeman. I mean, there's probably as many people in the garage that don't like him as there are that don't like Keselowski. Maybe not, but.
Yeah, and that probably comes and goes, but that was going to be my next point, is who did something the most wrong? That'd be Harvick, pushing Keselowski into it. I mean, that was a total Eddie Haskell move.
Yeah.
And that incident would not have been what it was if Harvick hadn't done it. And you see that little smirk on his face as he's doing it, and you know that he's getting exactly out of it what he wants. And
he actually got interviewed on the broadcast before anybody saw what he had done. They did a post-race interview with him before they got to Gordon and Keselowski, and Harvick's just, he made some comments about Keselowski and kind of smirked. Obviously, he knew what he had done, but no one else knew it at that point. It was about 5 minutes later in the broadcast. Look at what we found, and they showed that shove thing. Harvick off camera, and I guess I think I agree with you. I think I still think Gordon was the one who was the most wrong, and his reaction was a total whiner reaction, which he's been accused of in the past. And frankly, the way he raced that final lap, that's probably why he's still stuck on 4 championships. Because back when he was winning a lot of them, he wouldn't have raced that way. I don't believe.
He would have been smarter than that. Yeah. And
was...
his case has always come down to this kind of thing, something like where he makes one boneheaded move that puts, see the cat there behind Beth. He makes one, sorry, the cat's now attacking Beth, where he makes the one boneheaded move that takes him out of chase contention, and this probably was the one that derailed 2014.
That cat's name behind Beth Ann is Kevin Harvick.
All right, Beth. We finally have some audio from you, and I assume you can hear us now, Beth. So what did you think of this whole thing?
I don't know. These fights that have come up suddenly during this chase thing all smack to me as planned, to get interest for the chase. Suddenly
Really?
we're all talking about it.
So you think NASCAR's going the whole big-time wrestling thing, huh?
Yeah, I do. It's just, I don't know. I mean, or either that or they're encouraging it would be more probably truthful, that they're encouraging these people to, act on their aggressions.
Looks like that cat should be driving the 24 car.
much more aggressive than Jeffy, that's for sure. And the thing on this whole thing again is that, while Kozlowski's taken an awful lot of heat for what has happened, he is the guy who, in my mind, did the least wrong. He's the guy trying to win a race. He saw an opening, which everybody who drives a race car has said, at least that I've seen on Twitter, said if they were in that same situation, they would have gone for that hole as well. He's the one who did nothing wrong other than trying to win the race.
But everybody's hating on him.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing that I said this to Dan earlier today. Is there anybody out there that thinks that if that white number 2 had been a black number 3 about 15 years ago, that the outcome would have been any different? The only difference might have been is the black number 3 would have probably taken out the 48 car and the 24.
Yeah, exactly. And would have ended up in victory lane.
Exactly.
Smiling.
Right.
And,
Merc.
Yeah.
So I see nothing wrong with what he did. If anything, NASCAR also has to be culpable for this deal, allowing these guys to flip out these side skirts. And if anything cut the tire on Jeffy's car, it was the side skirt issue. Why all of a sudden are they allowing these guys on race cars that are supposed to be so templamatic, we'll say, is a word that I just made up, so templamatic, all of a sudden you can start pulling out sheet metal and have the side skirt sticking out? Why? Why does all of a sudden that occur?
And they all know, they're acknowledging that it's an aerodynamic help, and they're all doing it. I don't get it either.
And the question has been asked, and the answer is because it's hard to police. Now, when's the last time NASCAR chose to not police something because they thought it was difficult? I mean, that is not the reason they're doing it. They're doing it because they know it allows for better racing, and they don't make it part of the template for some reason. Although I don't know why they wouldn't just go ahead and say, build it into it. And maybe that's what they're doing for next year with dropping the horsepower. They change the templates too. But that just strikes me as being a very poor excuse for not policing it because it's difficult.
Well, if you're going to police it, A, and you're going to allow it, B, you make it into the rule so that it gives the effect that you want without having the sheer slicing ability of the sheet metal to cut a tire. Mm-hmm. Do it so that it's part of the race car. They've done it in sports cars for 100 years. They've had fender flares and side skirts and all that stuff, and they're not designed to cut tires.
Yeah, or go the other direction and make it Death Race 2000, where they've got little spikes that'll come out from the hub.
There you go. I'm all for that. Let's do that. Okay, before we get too far away from the topic here, who was more wrong at Texas, and did you like it? That's the comment bait I put up on Facebook. This is going to be a viral show because we have a cat in it now. So this is going to be our most watched show. So make sure you leave a comment up there, and Steve will tell you what you might win if you have the best one.
Well, when you submit your Shell Saver Card comment of the day, you can take home a $50 Shell gift card. And also, anytime Joey Logano, driver of that 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford Fusion, wins a 2014 points race, he's got 2 more shots at it. Shell Saver Card holders can save 22 cents per gallon on any grade of Shell nitrogen-rich gasoline or Shell diesel just by using your Shell Saver Card on the Wednesday, or if you prefer, the Wednesday after the race. Offer valid up to 25 gallons. If you need more information, I can't understand why you would, you can go to shell.us/Wednesday.
There you go. So leave your comment and maybe win $50 from the good folks at Shell.
And us.
And from us, that's true. We put out the stamp.
That's right.
And the content. So we're going to Phoenix, and then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Dan's going to go through the fantasy implications of that, which I find fascinating because of this chase thing. But we do have a chase that now has all 8 drivers are really in this thing to move on from the next race. We've got a match race leading to a match race, and everybody's involved. This is just going to be, I don't know what to expect. Do you guys have an idea what to expect this weekend? You know what, before we go there, the other story that's on everybody's mind is Michael Waltrip was kicked off of Dancing with the Stars last night.
He was voted off. He was not kicked off.
Oh, voted off?
Yeah.
What's the difference? was kicked off a NASCAR thing and voted off as a Dancing with the Stars thing.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, people realized that 76-year-old Tommy Chong was better than 50-something-year-old Michael Waltrip at dancing. But oh well, that's the way it goes. Yeah, finally he is gone. He is done. It was a very tearful goodbye.
Was it?
Yeah, and his dance partner.
Was it your tears or his?
No, his dance partner shed a tear or two here or there too, but mostly it was Mikey.
Beth Ann, were you surprised that your favorite driver got finally lost out on Dancing with the Stars?
I, having not watched any of it, I really don't know.
Steve watched it. I guarantee you, Steve watched it. He's probably going to watch it. He's probably going to watch it next week, even when Michael's off the show. Steve's a TV guy, though. I'm not a TV guy. I can't. I tried to make myself remember to watch that last night, and I remembered it at about 2 hours after it was over. So I had to look it up on Google to see if he made it or not.
Yeah. The stars did not line up for him doing his rumba. You know, it was not going to be good. Now, if he would have had a chance to do the jazz, you know, it might have been okay, but doing a rumba, wasn't going to happen.
So that's what knocked him out, his rumba?
His rumba. He did not rumba well.
That's kind of what we had in Texas, wasn't it? It was a rumba in the...
It was the rumba in the pits.
Yeah. Dan, do you watch any of that? Does that? I know you're such a professional NASCAR analyst that you probably don't get into this frivolous stuff that we do, but... What do you think?
No, but it's impossible to avoid. What surprised me is how many of the other NASCAR media were kudos. Boy, he stuck it in there he stayed in there for longer than we thought he would. He showed a lot of moxie. It's like, oh, come on.
Jesus, why? I don't get this at all.
Stop talking about this. So.
No, it wasn't his moxie. It wasn't his ability. It was just the fact that NASCAR Nation decided that they were going to keep one of their own on there as long as they could. And after a certain period of time, it just wasn't going to happen anymore.
Well, even NASCAR.com was shilling for votes for him. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But
or the Sanjay effect. Was that American Idol some years back where they just decided they were going to vote for the worst possible singer to see how far they could get him? So could have been some of that going on too.
Could have been. And
Michael does have and the
Waltrips do have a formidable social media following. So there's a lot of. I don't know if they have more than Tommy Chong, but I would be surprised if they didn't. So I don't know.
Yeah, but the problem with Tommy Chong followers is they forget to vote. Did I just call?
Where'd the chips go? All right, so enough of this. So now we're going to Phoenix, the penultimate race of 2014. Did I get that right this time, Dan? I know I got that wrong in the past. Okay, but it's the final race of the eliminator round of the chase as well. So what do you expect? I'm going to turn it over to the fantasy guy and just listen because I honestly, I am totally stumped. I expect Jimmy Johnson to win the race, but other than that, I don't know.
I expect Kevin Harvick to win the race. He's been stronger in the past. He's won 3 of the last 4. He's not exactly in a must-win situation, but he's 6 points behind the elimination bubble, and about 17, 18 behind the next position. So if one of the other guys wins, that's down there with him, Keselowski. Who else is down there? Keselowski.
Think Edwards is down there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If any of those other guys wins, then he's in even bigger trouble. So he's going to go out. He's going to try to win, and I think he probably is capable of doing it. When he does that, that's going to change the elimination bubble quite a bit also. No one is safe, but the top 3 drivers, Logano and Kenseth, tied at the top, and Hamlin, if they finish in the top 10, they should be able to Logano, Hamlin, and Newman, not Kenseth. They should be able to control their own fate. So they're going to run relatively safe races. The rest of it's kind of up in the air. And Keselowski's problem is going to be if any of a number of drivers gets knocked out. I think it reminds me of that scene from Airplane where the lady's going hysterical on the plane, and they're lined up behind her with boxing gloves and wrenches and just waiting for their shot at her. I kind of get that feeling that's how the drivers feel about Keselowski right at the moment. And even though some of them won't do it, you got to think that one of them will. You've got Harvick, you've got Hamlin, you've got Kenseth, you've got Gordon, you've got Kurt Busch, you've got a number of guys that potentially could take him out if they have nothing to lose. And at Phoenix,
Tony Stewart.
Yeah. Any of those other guys' teammates, potentially. I mean, you just don't know. After we saw Casey Kane's guys getting into the fight with Keselowski, you know that culture of animosity towards him goes beyond the driver, and it goes to the rest of the people. So long as those guys are in contention, I think we've got a relatively predictable finish. Once those guys start to get knocked out, and we don't know if or when that will happen, things become more unpredictable. We had Gordon taking out Boyer here at Phoenix a few years back. This is a place where you can get some payback. You're not going to hurt them nearly as much as you would on a restrictor plate super speedway or on one of the similarly configured mile-and-a-half tracks. So you'll mess with them a little bit more here than you will at Homestead, as long as there's nothing else on the line. That said, it is kind of up in the air. There are short flat track drivers that do well. You can typically stay out of trouble on a short flat track. A little bit less on the mile tracks than on the half mile tracks, and the damage is a little more significant when you do hit the wall. I think Gordon was my second ranked driver before last week, and I don't really see a reason to not call him that now. I think he'll finish well, but it might not matter if Kevin Harvick wins the race. A top 5 isn't going to do it for him. But I think those are the two guys that are the most predictably strong going into this weekend. Jimmy Johnson's one good race I don't think makes him predictably strong, but I wouldn't be surprised if he runs well, and I've got him ranked 3rd. He's done well here in the past. This is a good track for him. His 4 wins came in the span of, I think, about 10 races where he had nothing but top 5s. So this is a rhythm track, and he definitely has found the rhythm. But he hasn't been as strong recently as he was during his heyday. So that kind of takes care of Group A. Down in Group B, Denny Hamlin needs a top 10 finish. He should be able to challenge for a win on any short flat track. He didn't at Martinsville. He didn't at New Hampshire. Phoenix typically has been the worst of the short flat tracks for him, those being Richmond, New Hampshire, Martinsville, and Phoenix. And this is the worst of those tracks. But he's still capable of getting a top 10 finish. And that's going to be what the team is focusing on. They're not going to focus on winning, or they shouldn't. They're going to focus on getting a top 10, and they're going to get it, which is going to make him a good value down in Group B. Ryan Newman will continue to be consistent like he has all along. If he gets shuffled out, it's because of something like the wrong strategy at the very end, but you can't count on that. So he's going to get a top 15. That might not be enough to advance him, if depending on what happens at the top, because he has to have one of those top 10 finishes to be up there too. And I don't know that he's guaranteed to finish that well. Tony Stewart, I think, is a good dark horse this week. Last week, he started strong, had a bad middle to this race, and surged at the end, and benefited from the chaos that happened to finish just outside the top 10. That makes him a decent value in Yahoo Group B. And he's just now getting to the point where he's predictable. He's shaking what happened to him in the summer. He's able to concentrate again, or to take that concentration and convert it into a strong run. I don't think he's got that good start to finish like we want from him, but if you need a good differentiator, if you need someone that's not going to be on most of your competitors' rosters, Tony Stewart fits that bill. And then, of course, you've got Logano and Keselowski. Keselowski, I think, is a little risky because if they don't take him out here, someone will mess his day up or try to mess his day up at Homestead. They'll probably try to play games with him in both places. that could either galvanize him and make him run even stronger, or they could get to him. So it makes him a risky proposition to me. Logano, I think, probably a little bit better. He's done better at Phoenix since he went to Penske than he did before. It's still not one of his best tracks overall. So if you only have one allocation for those guys, I might even leave Keselowski on the table for 2 races, and I would start Logano at Homestead rather than at Phoenix. Down in Group C, you've got Ty Dillon in the field this week, who could be a pretty interesting choice. The number 33 comes in 2 versions, like the number 66 does, and whenever there's an RCR driver behind the wheel, they get more support from Childress, especially when that driver happens to be the grandson of Childress. I think that they've got the potential of having a 20-something finish. They're not going to outrun Larson. I don't think anybody in Group C will, but they're going to come close enough that Dillon could make a good allocation management play. Cole Witt did well here well enough here to make him interesting, and he had an 18th place finish 2 weeks ago at Martinsville, another short flat track. So, or is that Allgaier? That was Allgaier. But Witt's had a pretty good run here in the spring. So Witt and Allgaier for those 2 reasons. Allgaier's strong run at Martinsville, Witt's strong run in the spring, strongish run in the spring, I think makes them good allocation management plays if you've run out of or don't want to use your final allocation of Larson and Dillon. And that's what you're down to with Group C. If you're going to go for one of those marquee drivers, you're going to get more out of them on the high torque speedways rather than the driver's tracks like these short flat tracks. So if you have one of each, use one here, use one at Homestead. If you only have one allocation for either Larson or Dillon, use it at Homestead, and take one of the other drivers that I just mentioned here at Phoenix.
If you're in a salary cap type game, is Ty Dillon a no-brainer? Is he going to be cheap enough to where he's a no-brainer?
Yeah, I think so. If he's the cheapest guy in the field and he gets a 20-something finish, then that's going to free up enough money at the top to make it worth your while to put him on the roster. Just make sure you remember to get him off of it. But then next week we've got I think Trevor Bayne is going to finish out the season at Homestead, so you've got another good dark horse on the horizon. You don't necessarily have to use up your good dark horse this week.
Okay, well, that brings us to the point where we have to pick, and since I've already picked, I'm locked in for the next 2 races with Jimmy Johnson. I'll take that, by the way. You guys are on the clock. Beth, who you like? Who's your pick for Phoenix?
I'm going to go with Carl Edwards.
Wow, Carl Edwards.
Yep.
Steve?
I gotta go with Bad Brad.
Really? You think he's going to survive all the slings and arrows of those that hate him?
I think it'll absolutely put a rocket up his ass, and he'll go to the front.
That could do it. Dan, what do you think?
I think Happy will Harvick the field.
All right. So there's our picks for this week. We'll know sometime late Sunday night who moves on for the Final Four, NASCAR's Final Four at Homestead. And we'll talk about all that next Tuesday when we come back and do this On Pit Row Hangout again. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Dan down in Texas, Steve out in Sylvania, Beth Ann down in Bowling Green, me in Toledo, Ohio. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the racing, and keep your fingers crossed that there's another fight.
You've just been on Pit Row, and now you're up to speed with the best information about the world of NASCAR. Come back next week and join the pit crew, Steve and Charlie, and go on Pit Row. On Pit Row is a presentation of Bench Racing Productions.
Hi, this is Bobby Hamilton. I won the Daytona 500 at age 50 driving the Miller High Life Buick for Samoa Brothers. You're listening to On Pit Row.
This is On Pit Row. On Pit Row.